Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. A few weeks ago, we had a debate on the state of the UK economy, right? Between Gary Stevenson and Daniel Priestley, this guy. I've been online a few times after that, and I've kind of seen Gary Stevenson's whole perspective and his whole opinion on the debate and the whole state of the UK economy. But I haven't seen this guy's perspective on the debate, or what he really thought about Gary Stevenson in general. What actually did he actually take away from the debate? Did he actually change his mind? Did he see anything he never actually thought about in the first place? That's kind of what I'm here to see today. What his takeaway is from the whole debate. And without taking too much time, let's get right into it. But if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. And if you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel.
Is Gary Stevenson somewhat on the edge of a nervous breakdown?
He's definitely sitting on a lot of anger. He's angry, which I understand. From his point of view, wealth inequality is something to be very angry about. The people who are relating to his content, they want a voice of anger.
That's exactly what I always say, right? The people right now actually have someone that they actually look up to that can actually almost manifest the anger that they have. Because right now, people obviously are angry, and you can actually understand that, right? It totally makes sense. People are getting poorer, and they feel like there's just no other way out, and they feeling squeezed every single time because the economy is getting worse and worse and worse, and the disparity between wealth between people is getting worse and worse. Obviously, people would get angry because they feel like there's just nothing they can do. They don't feel like they're even living a decent life. That's obviously very, very bad. So you can understand where the anger is coming from. But at the end of the day, just getting angry is just one step. But you actually got to find a solution. That's the problem. I don't really agree with Gary Stevenson's solution, but you can totally understand where the anger is coming from. Because at the end of the day, things are getting very hard. Very, very hard.
Is he angry with the wrong people?
Yeah, he's misguided. He's definitely misguided. He's very low resolution. He has a very low resolution view of the world, which
What do you mean?
Well, there's no real nuance. It's essentially wealth inequality is getting worse, in his opinion, right? He doesn't share a lot of facts or data. He doesn't actually tell you where he draws that opinion from, other than personal anecdotes and personal observation, which is fine. That may be where he draws it, but he never shares any broader research. So
to be fair, right, I don't think you need any real stats to be able to back that. I think everyone can really feel like inflation's going up. People's wages is nowhere near being able to catch up to the rate that inflation is going up right now. Everything just seems to be way harder to be able to get. People aren't able to get on their housing ladders. Like, it just feels very, very difficult. To be fair, I usually understand using stats to be able to back whatever statement you make, but I don't really think you need any stats to be able to back that. Wealth disparity is getting worse. I don't think you need any stats to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Wealth inequality is getting worse. The rich are responsible and are accumulating too much wealth, and therefore the only solution is to tax wealth, and that's it. That's the
problem. Like, it's so basic level without any consideration of, okay, if we tax wealth and then we give it to the people that are poor, what do you think they do with that money for? They just use it and then pay for the things that the wealthy people already own, and the money just goes right back. That's the problem. That's the ultimate problem of just giving poor people money, because poor people spend money, rich people don't. That's ultimately the problem. If you give poor people money, they will just spend it and give it back to the rich people, because the rich people own basically everything. That's why the most important thing you can do is increase the wages of people that are working, increase the skill level, the labor level of the people that are working in the economy, increasing it so they can actually earn more and more and more, so they can have something they can actually rely on, that can constantly be a source of income, that can generate high level of income.
That's the whole argument there. Gary makes no distinction between the assets that billionaires own, the profits that sit inside their companies, and the revenues that they make as just the revenue of their business. He interchanges those three things completely. He also really makes no distinction between what is wealth. Wealth in his mind is houses. If you own houses, that's it, you've got wealth. But he doesn't take into consideration that Dyson is a $30 billion company or whatever it is, and it's mostly intangible assets. Or that INEOS is actually a global network of chemical production plants, and most of them aren't even in the UK.
But he might be talking about working class, where most of their wealth probably is in their house.
Yeah, but he when he talks about taxing billionaires, he only really talks about the idea that billionaires own houses. So in Gary's imagination, billionaires own houses, and they all produce 5% yield, and there's no cost for running them, and there's no debt on those houses, right? So, so that's what.
I mean, if you want to become a billionaire in real estate, you have to leverage.
Yeah.
You have to have debt.
Yeah.
That's the problem. He doesn't actually take into consideration, hey, these people that own all these huge assets, right? Some of them, they actually take out a loan to be able to finance all these things. They actually take out a loan to be able to leverage these like assets that you're talking about. Also, you need money to be able to run these assets. So you don't just own a house. You need to actually maintain the house to be able to generate any level of profit. Owning something doesn't mean you take out every single money that comes from it. You still got to pay for something to be able to maintain and upkeep some form of wealth. That's the problem. That's the problem you don't seem to understand. You just think any money that comes out of anything you own, that's just ultimately profit. No, that's just revenue. That's all that is. Profit just comes after that.
So, yeah, and are there any houses that require no work and spit out 5% per year, and that you just don't know, right? So,
I mean, the upkeep on some of this stuff would be crazy.
of
The
course.
yields in London are really low.
like 3% gross in London.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once you actually zero out any costs of running it, you're lucky.
And inflation.
Yeah, exactly. You're lucky if you keep anything.
But he's an economist, isn't he? Because he's called Gary's Economics.
He says this thing over and over. They're making passive income, and then they're squeezing you out. So his imagination is that the billionaires, they make all of this money. It's all liquid. Then they transfer that into middle class housing somehow. They somehow have all of this cash with no debt and no costs associated. They then buy up all the middle class housing and squeeze everyone out, and then they earn 5% passive income, which they reinvest into owning more houses in the middle class, which I don't know any billionaire that does anything like this plan. If all
The problem here probably is that Gary Stevenson is probably focusing too much on like the housing market. If you're ever gonna make a good argument for the position Gary Stevenson is holding, you can't just focus primarily on just housing. You can't just focus on that because there's so many factors that comes into housing. Like right now, foreign investment could also be seen as a problem. And the people that are investing in this country, the process that he talks about, the billionaires just having money and squeezing the middle class out, that's not what's going on with the housing market right now when it comes to foreign investment. Foreign people that are investing are building houses and then they're obviously renting it out or selling it. That's typically how the process is done. That's what a lot of people complain about with the housing problem right now. It isn't billionaires getting money, buying up the middle class homes and then squeezing every middle class person out. That's not the process at all.
billionaires I know have created companies that become
Yeah.
very worth a lot on paper.
Well, the very, very few billionaires in property, because there's very few, because I'm in property, it's generational wealth.
Also, most billionaires in property are probably on the development side, where they're developing and they're moving stock through, like they're actually producing better homes. So they, a lot of the times, if you're
And
rich,
generating tax revenue.
as you would know, if you're rich in property, it's probably because you're buying dilapidated stock and bringing it back into the market.
Where you hire all the labourers.
Yeah.
And you create a
Yep, you gotta hire people. People have got to work for you. You got a lot to pay. You got to pay council tax. You got to pay corporate tax. There's a lot of money to upkeep a business. It isn't just buy the thing, own the thing, get money from it. It isn't that simple. That's why wealth tax is extremely difficult to be able to facilitate.
economy.
And you create houses.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
women. Or you're putting up new buildings, which you've done.
Or renovate existing ones.
That's exactly the point. If you build houses, you can't talk about squeezing out the middle class because people are building it from the start.
So then you go from there was no 200 houses, now there's 200
Yeah.
houses.
Exactly,
So
because they're building it by themselves.
We're solving a problem the government aren't.
yeah, exactly. And also there's huge costs.
That's what I was talking about earlier. Foreign investment are building houses. They're actually creating a platform for houses to be built because government spending isn't going to be enough to be able to facilitate for that. So if they're building the houses, you can't tell them they're squeezing out the middle class because all they're doing is building the house by themselves, by the money that they are obviously using to make the house. So it's obviously theirs.
associated with it. There's not this idea that you're suddenly sitting on all this money and there's no debt and all that sort of stuff. So he has this incredibly low resolution view. Because of that low resolution view of how it works, he's just missing the obvious angles for people to leave.
Gary Stevenson is kind of like, entrepreneurs just saying, be responsible, start a business. He even kind of said it's sick. It's sick,
Disgusting,
Daniel.
yeah.
Yeah.
this is definitely one part where I disagree with Daniel Presley, whatever his name is, right? The idea that, oh, this is the best time to be an entrepreneur, so therefore everyone right now should be looking like, no, that's such a bad idea. I made a video like 2 or 3 weeks ago about that. He was giving advice that people should just take up the opportunity to be an entrepreneur. This is the best possible time you can ever become an entrepreneur. That's just a bad advice. And also telling people they shouldn't take education seriously. The education is in a path that's just wrong. That's one part where he absolutely got it wrong.
Yeah.
It does appear that way to them. To people who are not entrepreneurs, of course that seems... It's like if I said to you, in order for you to get ahead, you have to become a dentist. You're like, I don't want to be a dentist. Right? Like...
Yeah, but being an entrepreneur, you can start a business in anything you want. It's kind of not an accurate analogy.
But the vast majority of people don't want to do that. And I'm not against them for that.
No, it's not they don't want to do it. It's like people, you got to understand, when people have lives, okay? Some people that don't have ends meet, they can't pay for the rent, pay for the gas, pay for the bill. You can't tell those people to start a business. It makes no sense. Like, very few amount of people are ever going to be able to do that. And if all these people start, the idea that they're just going to be successful at it is crazy. Most businesses within 5 years, they all close down. By the time you hit 10 years and the people are still there making profits, they've already worked 6, 7, 8 years to be able to facilitate anything to make that business work. Most people cannot do that.
Yeah.
By the way, I've never said everyone needs to be an entrepreneur. Never said that.
Simon's good.
But he did say, though, that this is the best possible time to become an entrepreneur, and school is not a good way to go. Just skip school and go work for someone that's a business so you can learn from there. It's like weird.
It does.
He does, and
Yeah.
I disagree with him.
I disagree with him. He would walk into cafes and say, oh, quit. Start your dream. If he walked into my business and told some of my staff to quit, I'd headbutt him.
But it could also, let's say you didn't, it could also be a disaster for them.
Of course. Like, you need employees. Employees need employers.
Forgetting that, the idea that everyone should be a founder, it's an incredibly stressful job.
Yeah.
It's a dedicated set of skills that most people don't have.
And it would make a very top-heavy society organisationally. You couldn't have it. You can't physically have it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe with AI and robots you could, that everyone could have extremely small teams, lean teams, and everyone could be a co-founder. But, I mean, that's not at all what I've ever said.
No.
I've only ever said, look, I have said this. I'll tell you what I've regularly said. I've said everyone can be more entrepreneurial.
Or
So-
surely everyone can improve their life. Is that not what we should be talking about?
So everyone can improve their life through personal agency and better decisions.
So you could go from 35 grand a year to 47 grand a year.
Or you could be happier with better decisions, or you could be healthier.
Yeah, that's true. But the problem is not just the idea of just agency, anyone can just do that. It's absolutely not true at all. Because that misses the whole point that government can absolutely, and policy decisions and political and economic decisions can always improve people's lives. That totally ignores that. The idea that anyone can just increase how much money they make is totally wild. That totally undermines the fact that government have a real level of power to be able to impact the people that work in the country, to be able to improve their lives. That it doesn't take that into consideration at all. People also have agency, yeah, sure, but not just anyone can just do that. Like, that's the problem. And obviously admitting that reality doesn't mean you're all of a sudden a nihilist and you don't see any point or even working or even trying anything new. No, that's just the reality, unfortunate reality. Everyone can try, but most people, overwhelming majority of people are never going to be successful. That's just the point.
Healthier with better decisions.
Or you could try and get a new, better job, or develop your career.
You could negotiate a pay rise.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Cook wasn't an entrepreneur.
No, he's
a billionaire.
He's a billionaire.
Yeah.
So I really believe that there is personal agency.
I.e., take responsibility for where you are.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I don't agree with at all. He doesn't realize that people are in very difficult situations. He doesn't actually realize that someone being born in a middle class home and someone being born in a lower class home, they have different level of requirements in their life. They've had different experiences when it comes to education, when it comes to socializing with people, when it comes to opportunities. People have different path in their life depending on the social status they're actually born in. And by that being the case, you've already put a barrier in front of some people, which means it's going to be fundamentally way more difficult for one person to be able to make the leap in the near future, to be able to achieve anything that's going to be remarkable in their life, whilst also the other person on the other side that's born into upper class or middle class, they will obviously have an easier time because they've already got resources that's already required for them to be able to make like substantial like steps in their life, right? He doesn't take that into consideration. People are born into different homes, different families. He's not taking it into consideration, and that's like the most important thing that needs to be really realized. The idea of just pure agency and then whatever you do, it's all you, like that's something that I totally disagree with, and I absolutely disagree with that. Everyone should just be more entrepreneurial. That's a bad idea. That's totally silly. Totally silly. But that's my opinion on the video. Remember, if you like the video, drop a like, and if you want to see more content like this, subscribe.